Good afternoon and good evening, everybody, and welcome to Carving It Up right here on Facebook Live, YouTube, and Twitter. Hope everybody is having a great evening. We got a lot to discuss on the show. Russell Wilson, Dak Prescott, Carson Wentz is likely going to be traded by the Philadelphia Eagles. Also, Tom Brady had himself a good time at the Buccaneers parade. But I'll start with Russell Wilson, who made it abundantly clear that he is getting more and more frustrated by this Seattle Seahawks organization, and it's not identical to Deshaun Watson's situation for a few reasons. Number one, Deshaun is just in a totally dysfunctional franchise with a coach that was certainly not their first choice, an owner who was allegations at the very least of racism. Certainly other things played into the situation. But Deshaun also didn't have a good offensive line. He had receivers come in and out. They traded his best receiver, DeAndre Hopkins, to the Arizona Cardinals, basically for David Johnson and a second-round pick and a bag of chips. And so, and listen, the Houston Texans also have no history of winning, to say the least. Russell Wilson, though, I would say, believe it or not, even though Deshaun comes from the more dysfunctional situation, I would say Russell Wilson actually has the leverage, or I should say 100% of the leverage. I think Deshaun absolutely has the leverage in Houston, Dak in Dallas, and again, we'll get to Dak later on the show. But in Russell Wilson's situation, what's interesting about him, I think, is that Russell, yes, he's in an organization that put together a really good football team, won the Super Bowl his second year, and got to the Super Bowl and came within a yard of winning it in his third year as a starter in the NFL. The problem is, since then, obviously, the Legion of Boom kind of fell apart. Cam Chancellor got hurt. Earl Thomas left. Richard Sherman left after an injury. That stuff happens. It's part of it. You can't keep a great team together forever. Golden Tate left. It happens. Max Unger. But I think that the big thing for me with Russell Wilson is that in that interview with Dan Patrick, where he basically just kind of spilled the beans in the most Russell Wilson play way possible, right? Russell's known for being team first guy, all about respect for the organization. Which, man, good on him. It's been talked about in the media all week, and it's true. Every interview he always ends with "Go Hawks," right? So he is the ultimate team first guy. So if Russell is spilling the beans on this stuff, then that's not a good sign whatsoever with the Seattle Seahawks, because Russell, since he came into the league, has been sacked nearly 400 times. I believe either Aaron Rodgers or Matt Ryan is in second, and it's a distant second. I mean, it's way back. So I think with Russ, he said, man, I just want protection. And he was also saying, look, I'd like us to throw the ball more, in one way or another, saying, I'm pretty good. I'm a top 3 quarterback in the NFL. And yes, we need to, running the ball. You got to run the ball. We saw that with the Kansas City Chiefs, the Super Bowl, where not running it, where that gets you. You need to be able to run the football. I get that. But with Russell Wilson, he had beast mode, but he's not asking for a top 3 running back like Marshawn Lynch was in his prime. And a matter of fact, he's like, man, can we throw it around a little bit, just a little bit, okay? So here's what's interesting to me is he's been the ultimate team first guy for 9 years. He just completed his 9th year as a Seahawks quarterback, and he's saying, look, I've been asking for an offensive coordinator who will, let us throw the ball a little bit. Pete Carroll, great of a coach as he is a little out of touch. Is it fair to say with the modern NFL? I think we would all agree that he's a little out of touch with the modern NFL. He's not Sean McVay. He's not Kyle Shanahan. He's not Andy Reid. And I don't think it has anything to do with his age, because I just mentioned Andy Reid. I understand as you get older, you get maybe a little more set in your ways, but look at Nick Saban in Alabama. Nick Saban, for years, Alabama's brand was ground and pound offensively, great running game, and then defensively, hit people in the mouth, right? Create turnovers, force the opponent into long third down situations to give yourself an opportunity to make plays on the football. And now Nick Saban is totally endorsing for the last 3 or 4 seasons the spread offense, right? Because he had to. That was the direction college football was going. Because once he got Tua, that's when he really could see a change. And then obviously he did this with Mac Jones. Pete Carroll has, do we realize Pete Carroll has Russell Wilson? We are talking about, in my view, I get he did not finish the season well over the last month, and he did not play well in that playoff game against the LA Rams. But Russell Wilson is, in my mind, the second best quarterback in the league to Patrick Mahomes. Because you look at what he's done with, you think about this, Russell in 9 seasons, and we're not talking about, he's not the quarterback of the San Francisco 49ers, a historically great franchise, or the Pittsburgh Steelers, a historically great franchise, or even the Denver Broncos. We think of them for the most part as a historically great franchise. He plays for the Seahawks, and while they're not like a joke, they're not Detroit or Cincinnati. What was Seattle pre-what Russell Wilson? They had some great players, right? They had some Hall of Fame players. Got to the Super Bowl and played the Steelers in Detroit, and Pittsburgh just kind of dominated that football game. But outside of that 1 year, Seattle's been virtually irrelevant up until Russell Wilson. And so I think here he's got all the leverage, like 100% of the leverage goes to Russell Wilson because he's been the ultimate team first guy. Remember, his second contract only paid him $19 million a year because obviously he's on the rookie deal. The first 3 years of his career, he gets to the playoffs his first year. The second year, they go win the Super Bowl. And then the third year, they come within a yard of winning the Super Bowl. So, he takes a pay cut so they can keep some guys, I guess going the Tom Brady route, which is, to each his own. I've always been a proponent of get your money while you can because you never know what could happen. But Russ has again been the ultimate team first guy. He's all about getting other people involved. But Seattle's been a little rigid, I should say. Pete Carroll isn't exactly how should I put this? Isn't exactly great at embracing change as far as, on the football field. He's still kind of Pete Carroll from 2013, 2014. Seattle does not run a modern offense. You can ask anybody that watches film for a living or any coach, former coach, they're kind of a 2013, 2014 offense to game plan for when the NFL has, and college football and football in general has clearly changed a lot. So I think in this situation, he's got all the leverage. Now, do I think he'll get traded? I don't think so. Now, Seattle has reportedly received quite a few calls, especially since that Russell Wilson interview with Dan Patrick on the Dan Patrick Show. But I don't think he's going to get traded. I think this organization I do think it's well run. I don't think it's like a dysfunctional mess. But I do think they are totally reliant on Russell Wilson to keep them relevant. I would probably compare it a little bit to the situation in Green Bay. Like, Aaron Rodgers is not going to get traded this offseason. I think he's going to request a trade next offseason. I made that prediction a year ago. I said, Aaron Rodgers, I said this 1 year ago, 2 more seasons in Green Bay, because after they drafted Jordan Love, it was kind of like, okay, I guess Aaron's going to be out soon. So I predicted 2 more seasons in Green Bay for Aaron Rodgers. He's gone. I guess they go with Jordan Love and see what happens from there. But certainly Green Bay is not dysfunctional, but man, are they relying on Aaron Rodgers? And same thing in Seattle. And even Green Bay, they at least did win 3 Super Bowls pre-Aaron Rodgers. They did have, the great Brett Favre. I guess the best Seattle Seahawks quarterback before Russ was Matt Hasselbeck. Good quarterback, starting quarterback at his best, but was never considered one of the elite or one of the best in the league. So I think in this situation, I think he's got all the leverage, all of it. Because Seattle's like, look, this guy's kept us relevant for how long? 9 years. Okay. We given him, I don't want to say nothing to work with. He did have, DK Metcalf, who was really good last year. Isn't great against elite corners, but was pretty good last year. Tyler Lockett, who's a burner. They've got some good running backs, Chris Carson. But the offensive line, as far as pass blocking or pass protection, it's terrible. It's again, Russell, since 2012, since he came into the league, has been sacked far more than any other quarterback in football, 394 times. And so he's like, man, I'm tired of getting hit. Could you help me out a little bit? And so I think because of the fact that really he's been the one guy who's kept their organization and their team relevant. Because if Russell Wilson left and got traded to the New York Jets, okay, first of all, the Jets are getting a lot more primetime games. And secondly, who's outside of Seahawks fans, and the Seahawks have unbelievable fans, man. They're amazing. But outside of the 12th man, which was stolen from Texas A&M, but that's neither here nor there. Outside of the 12th man, who's watching Seattle next year? I mean, seriously. So just something to consider, because this is you got to make sure your quarterback is happy. I mean, that's the most. I dare say, actually, you know what? I will say it. The quarterback is more important nowadays than the head coach. It just is. Andy Reid's a great coach. Okay, he is. I didn't like some of his play calling in the Super Bowl, but that doesn't change the fact Andy Reid's a first ballot Hall of Fame coach. But Andy Reid was good with Alex Smith. He was good with Donovan McNabb in Philadelphia. Andy Reid's worked with some last year, when Patrick Mahomes got hurt midseason, Matt Moore, who had coached high school a year ago, came in, and Andy Reid, the Chiefs darn near beat the Packers, and they beat the Minnesota Vikings, who were a playoff team last year, and Matt Moore looks good in both games. And so, but once he got Pat Mahomes, then it was just, fireworks, right? So, again, remove Pete Carroll, we still say, okay, if they get a competent coach, Seattle's still a contender, right? So that's just my thoughts on the whole Russell Wilson situation. I don't think he's going to get traded. I think Seattle's smart enough to realize, hey, we need to listen to this guy. He's never been a problem in the locker room. Matter of fact, he's been the opposite. He's been the ultimate team guy. He's a phenomenal leader, phenomenal guy in the community. He just won the Walter Payton Man of the Year award, and just happy for him and for that as well. But he ends every interview and go Hawks. So you gotta please your quarterback. You have to. If you want to be successful, you got to please your quarterback. So speaking of quarterbacks that could be on the move, again, I don't think Russ will, but here's one I think could possibly move this offseason. And frankly, I hope he does this offseason and gets his money. And I'm, of course, talking about the guy who I'm wearing a hat from, Rain Dakota Prescott, better known to the common public as Dak Prescott. So we had two more situations where the Cowboys organization disrespected Dak. This one of them went kind of under the radar. One was covered, and I'll get to that first one in just a second. One was covered extensively in the media. Another, not really. I just kind of stumbled upon it on social media, and I made sure to check and make sure it was true. And I was like, oh my goodness, did they really do this? So the Dallas Cowboys, the day after the Super Bowl, they put out a video on Twitter, like their hype video, right? Like getting ready for 2021. This is going to be our year. We got to grind. We got to work hard. We got to get ready. We're going to go win the Super Bowl next year. Okay. Like a lot of teams do that, right? No problem. The problem was, there was one, notable exception out of that hype video, and that was Dak Prescott. Now, the Cowboys PR, the Cowboys social media team said, honest mistake. Okay, that's still your quarterback. And by the way, somebody who was in the video, Troy Aikman hasn't played an NFL game with the Dallas Cowboys in 20 years. Okay. I know Dak Prescott got hurt in the 5th game of the season, but at this particular moment in time, he's likely going to get franchise tagged. I would be surprised, although the more I read, I don't know. But I don't think any of us would be shocked if a month from now he's back on the franchise tag, or they go ahead and franchise tag him. But what I think is interesting is they just all of a sudden left Dak off their hype video, and sure enough, the social media firestorm, like, oh my God, the Cowboys left Dak Prescott off. To me, maybe it was an honest mistake. I don't know. I'm not just going to sit here and say, oh, shame on you. I don't know. It didn't seem to me like it was an honest mistake. Maybe it is. But something that, and listen, don't take this lightly. This is actually a story. So, there's these little, you guys know on Instagram and on Twitter and Facebook, whatever social media site you use, there's these polls, right? You vote on them. For example, Let me just throw one out there. Your favorite food, cheeseburgers or pizza? You vote cheeseburger, pizza. And once you vote, you tap, like, for me, I'd probably tap cheeseburger. But it's, you tap cheeseburger and, 67% agree with you and 33% say pizza. And so, these fan accounts on Instagram, right? They cover their favorite teams. These are fans. They engage with each other. Great. So one apparent Cowboys fan account put out a poll or a series of polls on their stories, their Instagram stories, basically saying for each Dallas Cowboy free agent, re-sign. The two categories were vote here, re-sign, or vote here, let go. And so they did all the Cowboys free agents. So it gets to Dak Prescott, who's obviously a free agent. Re-sign, let go. Now, the majority of Cowboys fans, the vast majority, it was like over 80% said, hey, re-sign. We got to keep this guy. We were dog crap without him. But according to the account, or the person running the account, there was a somebody notable that voted let go. And that guy happened to be the grandson of one Gerald Wayne Jones, his grandson, who does, I looked, own a part of the Dallas Cowboys. Of course, he's a part of a Jones family, but he voted let go. So apparently somebody in the Jones family has made it clear they don't want Dak Prescott in Dallas anymore. And I don't get it. I don't get it, because for the last 5 years in Dallas, so Dak comes in as a rookie, 4th-round rookie at that. Same draft class as Jared Goff, Carson Wentz, and, there's all the hype surrounding those two, right? By the way, both have, well, Jared Goff has been traded. Carson Wentz is going to get traded, and I'll discuss Wentz in just a moment. But Dak comes in, he's a 4th-round rookie backing up. He's actually the 3rd string. He goes in a training camp. He's the 3rd-string quarterback behind Tony Romo, of course, and the 2nd-string quarterback happens to be Kellen Moore, who is the offensive coordinator for the Dallas Cowboys. Well, Kellen Moore breaks his ankle in training camp, so he's done for the year. So Dak goes up to 2nd string, and Dak is just balling in the preseason. Romo starts the 3rd preseason game against the Seahawks, gets hurt, find out it's like an 8 to 10 week injury, and, all of Cowboys Nation like, oh, our season's over. Romo got hurt again. We saw how bad we were, because Dallas was bad the year before when Romo got hurt with the backup quarterback situation. It was a mess. So in comes this 4th-round rookie, and all he does, I think we as fans were thinking, oh, okay, Dak's gonna be the quarterback of Dallas for 6, 7, 8 games, however long, and then Romo will come in and, we'll see what happens from there. Nope. Dak starts all 16 games, never gives the starting job back to Romo. In fact, Romo midseason actually had to concede the job to Dak. He didn't have Jerry would have put him back in if it were up to him, but Jason Garrett, as bad of a head coach as Jason Garrett was, he said, no, Dak's our quarterback. We're rolling right now. And a rookie picked out of the 4th round out of Mississippi State, a guy who some people said is a tight end in the NFL, said he can't throw. He's inaccurate. The inaccurate guy that can't throw and should play tight end led the Cowboys to a 13-3 record. In the playoff game against the Green Bay Packers, it should be noted, he did put up 31 points, threw for over 300 yards, 3 touchdowns, and came back close to beating the great Aaron Rodgers. And so a year later, there's the Zeke controversy. Now, we can go into the legal stuff with that. All I have to say is it was probably, let's just say, yet another domestic violence gaffe by the NFL. They haven't exactly been pros at that issue. But Zeke gets suspended 6 games mid-season. He gets suspended 6 games before the season, but then they're battling. He keeps appealing. And so Zeke's playing through half the season. Dallas is playing pretty well. And then all of a sudden, boom, Zeke's is gone for 6 of the last 8 games. And people are thinking, oh, man, it's over. Dallas is going to... Dak kept them in the playoff race. By the way, with no receiving core. Okay, Dez Bryant couldn't catch or run routes. Cole Beasley was his best receiver at 5'9". Jason Witten was on his way to his first retirement. The offensive line was beat up. The defense was bad. Again, Jason Garrett is the head coach, and Dak kept them in the playoff mix, and they missed the playoffs barely, but they still ended up finishing with a 9-7 record. And so the next season, Zeke comes back, right? Zeke's healthy, and we're thinking, oh, here we go. Dallas is going to go on a big run here. And Zeke's good, but Dallas is 3-4 at the bye week. And during the bye week, they trade for one Amari Cooper. Now, keep in mind before that, Dak, Dallas, whatever you want to consider it, had no receiving core. We're talking about Allen Hurns was his number one. Cole Beasley was there. I think they had that one Thompson guy. I can't remember his name. Michael Gallup was, still a raw rookie. He needed that number one to help him elevate as the true number two receiver. But you can go watch the film for some of those Cowboy games. It was rough. Dak was just, man, where do I throw to right now? Okay, and he was getting pretty good protection, actually. The offensive line played well. There was nobody to throw to, and he was having to force the ball, and his stats looked terrible. They trade for Amari Cooper, who I wouldn't say is an elite receiver, but he's one of the better route runners in the NFL. Amari can be a head case sometimes, but that's a different story. Amari comes into Dallas. They lose the first game with him. They dropped 3-5. The sky's falling. We need to trade Dak Prescott. Okay, and I'm sure the Jones family's thinking, we need to trade him. And all Dak does over the next 8 games is he wins 7 in the next 8, wins the division. Along the way, he beats the Saints. He beats the Eagles. Both were playoff teams. The Saints almost made the Super Bowl that year. He beat them. And Dallas gets to the playoffs. He plays Russell Wilson head-to-head. Now, keep in mind, I believe Russell Wilson's the second-best quarterback in the league to Pat Mahomes. And Dak outplays Russell Wilson, gets the divisional round, and they lose to the eventual NFC champion LA Rams. They come into the next season, and the offensive line's beat up. The receiving core is great. Now, I will say this. Over the last few games, Dak did not play well against Chicago, against Buffalo. I'll give him a pass against New England because New England had a great defense that year, and the weather couldn't have been worse. It was 33 degrees. Winds are going like 25 miles an hour. It's raining. Couldn't be worse conditions, and yet, Dallas decided to throw the ball 44-plus times. Really genius. So they finished 8-8. And here's what I thought was interesting. Is you looked at Dak in 2019, and you look at Tony Romo in 2012. Dak ironically finished a mere 2. You heard that right. 2 passing yards. Not passing touchdowns, 2 passing yards behind Romo for the most passing yards by a Cowboys quarterback in a single season. And like Dak in 2019, Romo went 8-8 in 2012, and they missed the playoffs. They wind up losing a big road game against a divisional rival in 2012. Dallas lost to Washington to lose the NFC East. In 2019, Dallas lost to Philadelphia to lose the NFC East. And what did Jerry do after Tony went 8-8, had a great statistical season, and almost got the Cowboys to the playoffs? What did Jerry Jones do? Jerry Jones made Tony Romo the highest paid quarterback in football, gave him over $100 million guaranteed. Dak put up identical numbers, same record, lost a road game against a divisional rival like Tony Romo, and Jerry Jones gave him the franchise tag. So we go to this past season, and we'll look at the 5 games before Dak got hurt. The first game, they play the Rams. Dak plays good, not great. Could have absolutely played better. Dallas loses 20-17. Dak should have played better in that game. But we go to the next week, and you say, Dallas got all-time lucky on that onside kick against Atlanta, and you are absolutely positively right. I've never seen a special teams mistake like that in my life. That was as bad as it gets by the Atlanta Falcons special teams to just let that onside kick roll. But what people will leave out, let's just say for the sake of argument, Atlanta recovers the onside kick and the game is over. Dak still pulled up 37 points. That should be enough to win a game in the NFL at home against the Atlanta Falcons. Okay, so they ended up scoring 40 because, of course, they did recover the onside kick. They got the game-winning field goal ball game. But let's just say they don't even get that onside kick. They start 0-2. Cowboys still put up 37 points. Dak threw for over 400 yards, ran for 3 touchdowns, threw for 1. And so we have that. The next week, Dak goes toe-to-toe once again with Russell Wilson, the Seattle Seahawks, on the road. Now, obviously, Seattle not as daunting because it doesn't have the 12th man home field advantage. And Dak puts up 31, throws for, I think he threw for 3 touchdowns. Yeah, he threw 3 touchdowns, over 450 yards. He was sensational in that game. And Dallas put up 31. Dak left the field with the lead. It was like, it was 31-30. Dak left the field with the lead with 3 minutes left. Defense had an opportunity to just get One stop. Just get one stop, and the game's over. And they give up a touchdown drive to Russell Wilson, and Dak is not quite able to get them back all the way down the field. He makes an unbelievable play. He breaks a sack. He's trying to force it in the end zone on a Hail Mary. Gets intercepted. The game's over. The next game, he gets the Cleveland Browns. Dak does not play great through the first half. And all of a sudden, the Cowboys going into the fourth quarter, they're down 41-14, and we're thinking, oh, this game's over. Let's just go watch another game. Let's go watch, I don't know, Baltimore or somebody. And before you know it, you're looking at the bottom of your screen, and the Cowboys are down 3. Okay? And you're like, oh, man, let me tune back to this Cowboys game. They're down 3. It's 41-38. Dallas just put up 24 unanswered points. Dak's spread the ball all over the field to Cooper and Cedric Wilson and Dalton Schultz and Michael Gallup. And it's a 3-point game. And on the very first play of the next drive for the Cleveland Browns, Odell breaks like 4 tackles and takes it 50 yards, touchdown, game's basically over. Dallas loses that game. Dak led the offense to 38 points. 38 points should be enough to win you a game in the NFL. And then the game he gets hurt against the Giants, they had 24, through 2.5 quarters before Dak unfortunately suffered the injury. So we're thinking, okay, Dak's hurt. We're going to truly see how valuable he is to the Dallas Cowboys. So over the next 11 games, they got Andy Dalton. Andy Dalton's a good quarterback. Is he a starter? He's a low-end starter, high-end backup. If that's how I would label Andy Dalton. Good quarterback, right? He is one of the top quarterbacks you would want as your backup. Solid guy. Has never won a playoff game, but he's a good quarterback. Over the next 11 games, after starting 2-3, the Dallas Cowboys win 4 games. And those 4 wins came against the Minnesota Vikings. That was probably the most impressive win, and Minnesota went 6-10. They beat Minnesota. They get clobbered by Washington. I'm skipping ahead in the season, but once Dak gets hurt, they get clobbered by Arizona, clobbered by Washington, clobbered by Philly. They lose a close game, actually, to Pittsburgh, who I never bought into. The bye week, and then they go on the road and beat Minnesota, and we're thinking, here we go, the Cowboys have figured it out. And they get clobbered on Thanksgiving by Washington for the second time. And they go on the road to Baltimore. It's a big game, and they get clobbered by the Ravens. And then they come back the next week against the mighty Cincinnati Bengals, who finished 4-12. And they win in blowout fashion over the Joe Burrow-less Cincinnati Bengals. And then they come back the next week against the Jimmy Garoppolo-less Nick Bosa-less. Who else was missing? I think Raheem Mostert was out that game. Deebo Samuel was out. The 49ers were ravaged by injuries last year. They were hurt across the board. That's why they didn't make the playoffs. And Dallas won a close game over San Francisco. Then the next week, they're playing the Philadelphia Eagles, who finished 4-11-1, and they win that game pretty convincingly. And we're thinking, oh, Dallas, if they win and Washington loses, the Dallas Cowboys are NFC champs, ladies and gentlemen. And they go against the New York Giants, the same team that, by the way, Dak dropped 24 on in 2.5 quarters before getting injured, and Dallas puts up 16. Okay, I think it was 16, right? Let me make sure. I know Dallas put up under 20 points in that game against a good Giants defense. Certainly not a loaded Giants team by any means. If I could check the score right here. Yes, let's see. 19, excuse me. Dallas Cowboys put up 19 points in a do-or-die game against the New York Giants. Andy Dalton plays very poorly, turns the ball over multiple times, and Dallas goes home 6-10. But for some reason, throughout all that lecture I gave you, I apologize, guys. For some reason, through all that, the Jones family is still convinced, now we can win with somebody else. Now, it is to a lesser degree from this example I'm about to give you. But this is awful reminiscent of what New England did with Tom Brady. Again, to a much lesser degree. We're comparing the greatest quarterback ever to one of the better quarterbacks right now. In my mind, Dak's the 6th or 7th best quarterback in the league right now. Tom's the greatest ever. But like I said, it's like 3 clicks. I'd say 3 because Tom won 6 Super Bowls. It's like 3 steps below the Tom Brady thing. Because New England was like, you know what? Tom's 42. If we could get a proven quarterback in here, Cam Newton, we could go do something this year. And so they get Cam, let Tom Brady go, and the Patriots go 7-9, miss the playoffs. The Tampa Bay Buccaneers 4 days ago won the Super Bowl, and Tom was great this season. So apparently Dallas thinks, okay, you know what? We just don't have to pay Dak that much money. We could draft a young quarterback, and we're good. See, what Jerry Jones doesn't realize, and you would think he would, Jerry is certainly far from a dumb man. He's a very smart businessman. He's a terrible general manager, but he's a great businessman, and he's been the owner of the Dallas Cowboys for over 30 years. And, normally most of the time how it works, it works the way, like the New England Patriots were kind of a perfect model this year of how a team transitions from an all-time great quarterback or a great quarterback to a good quarterback, but you're going to need, it's going to take a few years to get that guy. Like Green Bay is like the ultimate outlier, right? They went from first ballot Hall of Famer Brett Favre to first ballot Hall of Famer Aaron Rodgers. That is not normal. The San Francisco 49ers years ago went from first ballot Hall of Famer, and at the time, the greatest quarterback ever, Joe Montana, to Steve Young, Hall of Famer. And so Dallas went from Tony Romo, who we can make an argument, is he a Hall of Famer? Is he not a Hall of Famer? It's a debate, but he was a great quarterback. You go from Tony Romo to Dak Prescott. Like, that doesn't happen. And you would think Jerry knew what it was like to go from a great quarterback to a great quarterback, right? Few years of kind of a dumpster fire, right? Quincy Carter, Drew Bledsoe. I mean, Drew was good, but he wasn't going to go win you the Super Bowl. And so Jerry goes from Troy Aikman, who won 3 Super Bowls, was one of the greatest quarterbacks in NFL history, probably, with all due respect to Roger Staubach, probably the most talented Cowboys quarterback ever. Again, won the most Super Bowls of any quarterback in Cowboys franchise history. So they go from Troy Aikman. He retires in 2001. And boy, did they have some lean years at that position. I mean, they were not... At the quarterback position, Dallas was a bad football team. Or at least not having a quarterback made them a bad football team and contributed to it. But then they get this undrafted kid out of Eastern Illinois, Tony Romo, and he's really good for a decade. And then it transitions to Dak. Like, that doesn't happen. So, roll the dice, Jerry. If you don't want to pay this man $40 million, which I think he deserves every penny of, we saw this season how valuable Dak is to the franchise. We saw the offense with Dak and without Dak. Like, the defense didn't change. The defense was just bad all season, right? This is one of the worst defenses I've ever seen. The offense, you still, even without Dak, you're like, hey, we got Zeke and Amari Cooper and Michael Gallup and CeeDee Lamb. And their offense wasn't bad, but it wasn't even close to what it was with Dak. Wasn't even close. So, Jerry, Steven, Jerry's grandson, you want to see Dak? Well, clearly Jerry's grandson wants to see Dak walk. He made that evident on IG. If you want to see him walk, okay, let him go. And you'll be right back where you were when Troy Aikman retired. Dak's not Troy Aikman. I'm not suggesting that. But he's a great, great young quarterback. And it's not easy to find those guys. So if you want to let Dak go, let someone else pay him $40 million and he goes succeed somewhere else while you're irrelevant, have at it. So let's transition to a quarterback who I briefly mentioned when I was discussing Dak, who is in the same draft class as Dak Prescott, and that would be Carson Wentz. Now, I didn't get a chance to talk about this on Monday because Monday is, it was all about the Super Bowl, right? But on Super Bowl Sunday earlier that day, Adam Schefter, great insider with ESPN for the NFL, he reported that the Eagles are going to trade Carson Wentz. They're looking to trade him. And apparently the 2 suitors for Carson Wentz are the 2 biggest candidates to land Carson Wentz in a trade are the Chicago Bears and the Indianapolis Colts. Both teams that are obviously looking for a new quarterback. Mitch Trubisky wasn't a disaster, but the second overall pick in the draft, by the way, Chicago traded up 1 pick to get him. It didn't work, right? I mean, they drafted Mitch, the Bears will always go down in history for drafting Mitch Trubisky over Deshaun Watson and Patrick Mahomes. two of the top 5 quarterbacks currently in the league. So needless to say, that was a mistake. But then you look at the Colts, who have a great roster. I mean, their defense is stacked. I love their head coach, Frank Reich. They have a great young running back who I loved coming out of the draft last year, Jonathan Taylor. They have some good young receivers and a phenomenal offensive line. So, although they did lose, who was it? Anthony Costanzo, I think it was the offensive lineman that retired from the Colts. So that is a loss, but they still have Quentin Nelson. They still have Ryan Kelly out of Alabama. They've got some great offensive linemen in Indianapolis. And so they're just, at this point, I believe they're a great quarterback away from being a Super Bowl contender, being a threat to Kansas City in the AFC. And so I say, and I've certainly been critical of Carson Wentz really since day one of the show. I think he's stupid talented. He's got a phenomenal arm. I do think he struggles with accuracy. All you got to do is look at his numbers. But I think that run at the end of 2019 that everybody was kind of fawning over and saying, "Hey, did this put him in the MVP conversation?" I was like, "Hold on. He beat the Giants with Eli Manning. The Washington, they were at the time the Washington, the other name. Now the Washington football team with Dwayne Haskins, which, by the way, Wentz barely beat Eli Manning, and a bad Giants team barely beat Dwayne Haskins, and a bad Washington football team that had the second pick in the draft beat an average Dallas team at home, barely, and beat a Daniel Jones-led Giants team in Week 17. So all of those, Wentz played amazing the last 4 games. Yeah, he did against the NFC East. Okay, what did he do in the games before they played the NFC East? Against Minnesota, against New England. He was terrible. Now this season rolls around, and before he got benched, he was on pace to have a Jameis Winston-like season. He wasn't going to throw 30 interceptions, but he was going to come close. He was going to get to about 25 before they benched him for Jalen Hurts. So I think Carson Wentz's issues are mental right now. I think that's the problem. I don't think he could have came back in Philadelphia even without Doug Peterson and really been able to rebuild his relationship with the organization. There have been reports coming from anonymous players, which I hate the anonymous players, anonymous anybody, anonymous sources. I want to know who you are, but that's neither here nor there. Anonymous players who thought Nick Foles was a better leader. Now, Nick Foles, talent-wise, is not in the same class as Carson Wentz. He's one of the 5 most talented quarterbacks in football. But, again, we've seen talented quarterbacks not be very good in this league. I think Tagovailoa in Miami's talented. Wasn't great. He was a little too conservative with the ball, didn't push it down the field. And Carson Wentz does push it down the field, but he throws into triple coverage. He takes terrible sacks. He does not do a good job of hanging on to the football if a pass rusher comes in his vicinity. So that's that. But I think there's one team in the NFL that could revitalize Carson Wentz's career, and that is the Indianapolis Colts. Because Carson Wentz could go to Indianapolis, okay? Who was his offensive coordinator the year he would have won the MVP in 2017 had he not torn his ACL? It ended up being Tom Brady, who had an amazing season that year. But even me, one of the biggest Tom Brady fans you'll ever find, can admit, about a guy who I've been critical of, Carson Wentz was going to win the MVP in 2017 and would have deserved it. But he tore his ACL late in that season with 4 games to go. And so that was that. But Carson Wentz was regarded as a top 3 quarterback after 2017. And who is his offensive coordinator? Frank Reich. Who's the head coach of the Indianapolis Colts? Frank Reich. So I think that situation would be perfect. And at that point, it would be all on Carson Wentz. It would be all on him because he'd have the running game, no doubt about it. The Colts were a great running team last year. He'd have the running game. He'd have the really good young receivers. It's not a great receiving core. It's not the Chiefs or the Bucs or another team. The Buffalo Bills have a great receiving core. It's not that, but it's a very, very solid receiving core. Definitely above average. And they could, by the way, go after maybe a receiver in free agency. They could go get one in the draft, maybe trade up to get Jamar Chase or a guy of that nature possibly. Young receiving core, great running game, great offensive line, okay? a coach who turned him into an MVP candidate 4 years ago in 2017, and a phenomenal defense led by Myers Leonard, who in my opinion is probably the best linebacker in football. I put Devin White right behind him as the 2 best linebackers in football. Devin White in Tampa Bay is phenomenal. But Myers Leonard is he's a monster. I mean, you got to watch this guy's tape. He's amazing. And by the way, the special teams of the Colts is good too, right? Roberto Blankenship had a good rookie season as a kicker. I'm trying to remember the other guy's name, the punter. I know he had like some kind of health scare during the season, so hope he's doing well. He's a good punter. So, and by the way, he'd be in a division where the Houston Texans won't have Deshaun Watson. Jacksonville is going to have Trevor Lawrence, and Urban Meyer, but that is going to take some time to develop. You know, they're not going to be a playoff team right away. And the Tennessee Titans, who are good, but nobody thinks of the Titans as Super Bowl contenders. They have a phenomenal running back, best running back in the league, an above-average quarterback in Ryan Tannehill, some really good receivers, A.J. Brown, Corey Davis, and a defense I don't really trust in big spots. So if Carson Wentz gets traded to the Indianapolis Colts, similar to Matt Stafford in L.A., those 2 guys would be in similar situations where they've got everything, offensive line, running game, coaching, defense, where it's all on them. It's all on them. If the team stays healthy, it's all on you. So if he gets traded to Chicago, he's better than Trubisky, although that's not saying much. I think Trubisky is a backup. I would take Andy Dalton over Trubisky. I would take Marcus Mariota. I would take Jameis Winston over Mitch Trubisky, even though he turns the ball over a lot. I think Mitch Trubisky's a backup. So Carson Wentz would be an upgrade from Mitch Trubisky in Chicago. But it's likely Allen Robinson's going to leave. He's a free agent. Khalil Mack is amazing, but, that Bears defense has gotten a little older. I like Matt Nagy as a coach, but could he do with Carson Wentz what Frank Reich did? I don't know. I really don't know. So I think the Colts would be a perfect fit for Carson Wentz. I don't think he could go back to Philly and truly win the organization back over, the fans back over. I think they're just going to roll with Jalen Hurts and see what happens. See if he is their quarterback of the future. See if he is the guy that can turn you into, over the next 3 or 4 years, maybe a contender. We'll see. But as a talent, I love Carson Wentz as an every Sunday quarterback. He makes too many dumb mistakes. He doesn't take care of the ball. I don't think, according to teammates, he's that great of a leader. There's been reports that he is hard to coach. So who knows? That's why I like Dak more. He's available more. I mean, the one injury Dak's ever suffered was a freak play. It was a freak play, right? The guy, comes up on top of him and his ankle gets pinned under and it snaps, right? Just a freak play. Carson Wentz has gotten hit, got hit in the knees, and that's how he tore his ACL in 2017. 2018, he hurts his back in practice. In 2019, he gets concussed at the very beginning of the game against the Seattle Seahawks. So he's had recurring issues with injuries. Dak hasn't. Dak, I think, has a similar arm to Wentz. Wentz can launch it. So can Dak, man. He can throw that thing a mile. Dak throws a more accurate ball than Wentz. He throws, frankly, an easier ball to catch than Wentz. He moves better than Wentz in the pocket and outside the pocket. And he doesn't make bad decisions, and he's coachable. So, I mean, that's why I think the Dak-Wentz debate is silly. But I think Wentz is going to get traded to Indianapolis. Now, what would they give up for him? We saw what the Rams gave up for Matt Stafford. I would take Matt Stafford today in a heartbeat over Carson Wentz. So we're thinking probably a second-round pick, probably. I don't know about a first-round pick, man. I wouldn't give up a first-round pick for Carson Wentz. I would probably just say, hey, we'll roll the dice. Maybe we could go get Dak. They're not going to get Deshaun Watson because Houston's not going to trade within their division. Maybe we could go trade up to get Zach Wilson or Justin Fields or Trey Lance from North Dakota State. Who knows? They're not going to give up any first-rounders for Carson Wentz, but I think it would work there in Indianapolis. Would they be contenders? Probably not. Would they be a playoff team? They were a playoff team with Phillip Rivers. If Carson Wentz can cut down his mistakes, I think they'd be division champions because Deshaun is not going to be in the division next year, and we'll see how it works from there. So final topic of the day. This has really been a show about quarterbacks, right? Tom Brady had himself a good time yesterday. The Bucs had their Super Bowl parade. Now, it's not what you would expect, where in normal circumstances pre-COVID, where you'd have a big celebration. The fans are there. In Boston, they've got the what are they called? They're not the banana boats. I'm trying to remember what they're called. Oh my goodness! Someone in the comments tell me what the Boston boats are called. But they had the floats. The players are there. They got the Lombardi Trophy. There's confetti. It's a lot of alcohol. But Tom Brady had himself a good time. I wish we had the video for you guys, but I'm sure you guys have seen it by now. Tom Brady is on a boat, so they're doing like a boat parade, right? I think they were pretty close to Daytona Beach. They're going across this river. Mind you, the river is 26 feet deep, and Tom is on the back of, I think it's his boat. That's like, it costs like $3 million or something. It was crazy. He's on the back of his boat, and not too distant is another boat which had Mike Evans and Cameron Brate and Gronk and Chris Godwin. Really, like the receivers and the tight ends had their own boat, and the quarterbacks and everybody had their own boat. Blaine Gabbert was on the backup quarterback, was on Tom Brady's boat, and Tom's got the Lombardi Trophy, and he's on the back of the boat, and he's faking like he's gonna throw it, and we're all thinking, oh come on, Tom's not gonna throw the Lombardi. Oh, we just threw the Lombardi Trophy to the other boat that looked like it was about 20 feet away. And you can hear, by the way, there's an angle of Tom tossing the Lombardi where it's behind Tom, and you can hear his daughter Vivi in the back say, "Dad, no, don't throw it." And I was with Vivi. I don't know what he was thinking. And he tossed it, and Cameron Brate made the biggest catch of the season, because if he drops that sucker, wow. What? Somebody's going to have to go down and get it. Maybe Gronk goes down 26 feet. I don't know. But they're going to have to get some scuba divers or something to retrieve the Lombardi Trophy, which would have at that point sunk 26 feet to the bottom. And who knows what would have happened. But Tom, we've never seen this side of Tom. He he doesn't drink during the season. He's said that on multiple occasions. I don't drink any alcohol whatsoever during the season, which I think is smart, right? It's one less distraction while you're during the season. But Tom had a few yesterday. And I don't think it was Blaine Gabbert helping him out, but it looked like one of maybe the practice squad quarterbacks or something. They had to help Tom Brady off that boat into the dock. And they kind of had to get out of there kind of fast, because there were a bunch of Tampa Bay reporters there and wanted to interview Tom Brady. And I doubt those interviews would have came out the best. But Tom Brady had himself a good time, a good old time at the Super Bowl parade. And again, I don't know. Look, it is Florida, so there's that. But I don't know how strict the rules were at that parade as far as COVID is concerned, because it did look like there were a lot of fans there. So who knows? But Tom had himself a good time on that boat. And what can you say? He's a 7-time Super Bowl champion. I made the case that he's the greatest American athlete in the history of team sports, because look, Babe Ruth, great, but Tom's equaled him in rings. And look, it's way harder to win championships in the NFL really than any other team sport, including baseball. Michael Jordan, that was the one debate: who's greater, Jordan or Brady? And it is hard to compare sports. It's hard enough to compare positions in the NFL. Who's the best player in the league? Aaron Donald, a defensive tackle, or Patrick Mahomes, a quarterback? As far as best player, I would go with Aaron Donald, and Patrick Mahomes a close second. But obviously, both are great players. So comparing two different sports is two different things. So you have to take into context, how difficult is it? And it's hard to win any championship, but how much more difficult is it to win in one sport than the other? The NBA is built for dynasties, right? That's why we've had so many dynasties in the NBA. We had the Celtics, we had the Lakers, then we had the Celtics and the Lakers. In between was Philadelphia. And then along came the Chicago Bulls in the 90s. They won 6 championships in 8 years. In between that was the Houston Rockets winning back-to-back NBA finals. Then came the Spurs, who had a longer dynasty. They never won back-to-back championships. After the Spurs won their first championship, here come the Shaq and Kobe Lakers going on a three-peat. That's the last time an NBA team has three-peated in the finals. And then you have the Heatles, which were really, I don't think the Heatles were a dynasty. LeBron, D-Wade, Bosh, I don't think they were a dynasty. They only won 2 championships, but they were really good. And then after that, you had the Golden State Warriors, who won 3 championships in 5 years. Now you have the Lakers trying to be a dynasty. Like, we've had a lot of dynasties or dominant teams in dominant championship winning teams in the NBA. We've only had a few NFL dynasties in the Super Bowl era. So you got the Steelers were really like the first true dynasty, right? They won like 4 Super Bowls in 7 years or something like that. Terry Bradshaw was the first quarterback to win 4 Super Bowls. They had, the steel curtain. I mean, that was an unbelievable defense. Offensively, they had Lynn Swann, who I think was the MVP of one of their Super Bowls. Those were some great Steelers teams, coached by Chuck Noll, Hall of Fame coach. But then the 80s, you had the 49ers. And then the 90s, you had the Cowboys. And then for 20 years, it was the Patriots. So as far as legit NFL dynasties, we've only had 4 like true dynasties. Pittsburgh in the 70s, San Francisco in the 80s, Dallas in the 90s, and New England for the last 20 years. Now, New England's not a dynasty anymore. Dare I say, is Tampa Bay the next dynasty? I mean, Tom's going to play. My prediction is he's going to play to 47 years old, his 25th season. He said he wants to go past 45. He's going to be 44 once next season starts. Is Kansas City the next dynasty? I don't know. Tom's going to be in their way. So it'll be really interesting to see how it plays out. But Brady, in a sport where it's more difficult to win championships, has one more ring now than Jordan. Not as many MVPs. But again, Jordan's second team, the Washington Wizards, he was really good. He averaged 20 points a game, but the Wizards never even made the playoffs. Tom Brady goes to his second team, and in his first year, wins the Super Bowl. By the way, his last 2 wins to win the Super Bowl were against Aaron Rodgers and Patrick Mahomes. Well, I would argue the best 2 quarterbacks of the season. Patrick Mahomes and Aaron Rodgers were the 2 best. Aaron was the MVP. I believe Patrick came in second. And Tom beat them both back-to-back to close out the Buccaneers run. So Tom had a good time. He deserved it. Hopefully he got some sleep. And we know this guy operates. He'll be ready to go next season, as good as ever. So that is all the time we have for today's show. It was really a quarterback-loaded show. Not a ton of NBA topics. We may get into some of those tomorrow. But hope everybody has a great week, or a great evening, I should say. We'll be back right here tomorrow at 6 p.m. Eastern, 3 p.m. Pacific, Facebook Live, YouTube, and Twitter. Have a great evening, y'all. God bless y'all, and peace out.